In this episode, I visit with Meredith Hackwith Edwards, podcast host of Meredith for Real, who talks about her presentation at Podfest Expo 2023 on creating great titles for your podcast. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. And today I'm thrilled to have Meredith Hackwith Edwards with me to talk about her role in podcasting, her talk at Podfest Expo 2023, and what she hopes to get out of it. So Meredith, with that incredibly long-winded introduction, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
First of all, thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. I know when you say it sounds like a sneeze, like Meredith Hackwith, who were like Gesundheit. So you did great.
Oh, good. So you are a podcaster. Tell us about your role in the podcast world.
I started my own podcast, which is Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert, in 2019 in order to inspire curiosity over canceling. And I've been doing that ever since, new episodes every Monday. And I also, as of earlier this year, started hosting and producing a podcast for Escambia County Public Schools here in Florida. And so I also do that.
Very cool. Probably the best trait I have and that my parents gave me was the trait of curiosity. I am
Yeah,
insatiably curious.
that's
And
good.
yeah, so I definitely applaud that. So what are you going to talk about at Podfest Expo this year?
Class is about naming episodes, how to create catchy titles, and answer the questions like, should you number your episodes? How do you convert the click? What's the difference between naming a title of an episode like a headline on a newspaper versus for a podcast? And how are they different? Stuff like that.
So it sounds like that people can actually not only learn a lot, but they can start changing their headlines during the middle of your presentation if you nail it with them.
Yeah, hopefully. And I'll be renaming someone's episode during the class. So someone has volunteered their episode for me. So I'm going to listen to it ahead of time and then show up on the screen what it is and then give bullets of what I got out of it as I listened to it and show the process of renaming an episode for SEO optimization and also just drawing that person in and making them want to click. In fact, a little cheater preview is that if you can ask a question as your episode title, it's almost like people can't help but want to know the answer. So they are just drawn to click it because they want to know what's the answer to that question. Or they're thinking, oh my gosh, I've always asked that question. And yeah, I don't know the answer. So either way, then you have a new listener.
That's great. So what do you hope to get out of Podfest Expo this year, Meredith?
I really hope to get some fresh creativity. I have found since attending that Podfest is just a great place to marinate in a creative space. Being around other people who are doing interesting things with their podcast, I'm especially interested in people that are taking their podcast, which obviously is something virtual, and making it something not virtual, making it something, I don't want to say real, because of course a podcast is a real thing. But for example, I met a fellow podcaster who wrote a book based on her podcast. Very cool. So people who are doing meetups, of course, we've heard of that, but I'm just curious, like, what are other people doing to take the digital and make it analog?
That's very cool. I, for one, am greatly looking forward to your presentation. I have always struggled with titles, numbers, questions, and all of those things. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to meeting you at Podfest Expo. And I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to visit with me today.
Absolutely.
This is Tom Fox again. I hope you will plan to join me in January 26th to 29th for Podfest Expo 2023 in Orlando. This podcast is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network, and this podcast is sponsored by Podfest Global. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you'll join me again.